segment. Hi, how are you? How's your day? I hope you had a great day and you feel blessed and grateful today. So, this is the first time that I'm doing live, and I'm just using my voice as I prefer not to have myself be seen. But yeah, there's something that I come across in my reading for today, and I think this is a very interesting point to share. This is actually a research study, in particular, in the field of psychology, and the topic is about the rise of emotional vultures. So I think you've heard, for some of you, you might be familiar with the term vultures. So this concept is taken as a form of an exploration in this particular study. The title is The Rise of Emotional Vultures, Exploring Opportunistic Dating Trends in the Wake of Vulnerability. This is by Dr. A. Shedji George, an independent researcher from Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. So here is the abstract of the paper. The current dating environment has witnessed the introduction of extremely problematic patterns that demonstrate the opportunistic and deceptive lengths people will go to achieve selfish aims. Waltering is the most recent dating neologism, named after the scavenger like vulture to characterize the habit of circling emotionally fragile people, providing false consolation, and using their vulnerability to satisfy one's own romantic or sexual desires. This psychology study examines the origins, methods, outcomes, and preventive strategies of this fundamentally exploitative dating phenomenon. Research into the topic uncovers similar language that emphasizes various harmful dating practices. However, the term Waltering specifically emphasizes the predatory nature of manipulating someone's grief, despair, or emotional pain for personal benefit while pretending to be a friend and offering assistance. In depth interviews with victims detail the phases by which so called Walters gain trust, encourage dependence, isolate targets, and then make romantic and sexual advances from a position of power. The profound emotional and psychological damage stemming from this duplicity and betrayal can deeply undermine victims' abilities to trust in future relationships. Quantitative data analysis of a survey of 1,024 young adult dating app users provides alarming insights into the pervasiveness of weltering approaches, with 41% of respondents indicating they have either practiced or fallen victim to such opportunistic emotional manipulation in the past year alone. Furthermore, 22% of those victimized by Waltering reported severe impacts on their self confidence, intimacy, intimacy capacity, and mental health. A regression model controlling for salient socio-demographic factors reveals that age, gender, and recent relationship dissolution serve as statistically significant predictors of both Waltering perpetration and victimhood. In light of the human wreckage resulting from these exploitative dating phenomena, this paper synthesizes expert guidance around establishing personal boundaries, identifying manipulation warning signs sooner, seeking external emotional support, and ultimately disengaging promptly from any suspicious relationships. Widespread education is urgently required to promote awareness of weltering as a form of emotional abuse that should prompt zero tolerance. Until the sociocultural conditions that foster the normalization of such problematic dating behaviors shift fundamentally, individuals must arm themselves with the knowledge to evade the clutches of these ruthless emotional vultures. The original qualitative and quantitative evidence presented provide alarming confirmation that the rise of so-called waltering approaches signal a crisis of emotional exploitation that demands interventions at both the individual and societal levels. Future studies should focus on the most effective countermeasures and educational programs to curb such abusive dating tactics. Hello, good morning to all of you, beautiful souls, and welcome to our live. So, let me read first here the comments from Tanya Elizabeth Castro. Hi to you, Tanya. Yeah, yes, Tanya, you can see me because I prefer to off my camera. I just want my voice to be heard. Yeah, I'm sorry for that, Tanya. And hello also to Les Paul Medina. Hello to you, Les Paul. And to Tijon Christophe Muhar. Hello to all of you beautiful souls. By the way, I'm currently reading a paper entitled The Rise of Emotional Vultures, Exploring Opportunistic Dating Trends in the Wake of Vulnerability by Dr. A. Shaji George. This is actually a very interesting psychology study talking about those people who are taking advantage of the times that we are in grief, we are emotionally distressed or emotionally vulnerable, and there are people who are taking advantage of our weakness, and then for certain advances like sexual advances, romantic advances, and other forms of exploitation. So earlier I was reading to you the abstract of the study. So what is highlighted here as a form of emotional vulture is actually the term waltering. So those people who are taking advantage at the time that you are emotionally weak, they're actually called as walters. Okay, so of course, we have here the keywords like grooming, trauma bonding, boundaries, betrayal, coercion, support, discernment, exploitation, intimacy, and vulnerability. So, what is actually the background on recent problematic dating terminology? So, let's say, for example, we have here cocky jarring or ground hugging. The landscape of dating and relationships has rapidly evolved, shaped by the emergence of technology, online communication, and shifts in sociocultural norms. In recent years, multiple new and often problematic dating trends have surfaced, typically assigned seemingly innocuous names that belly more insidious behaviors beneath. The innocuously labeled cookie jarring and ground hugging phenomena highlight two such examples of manipulative relationship patterns that toy with partners' emotions, exploit insecurity, and utilize deceptive tactics for one's own gain or validation. These behavioral trends set an unsettling backdrop of the current exploration into an even more explicitly predatory dating phenomenon, colloquially termed waltering. Cookie jarring describes the non-committal dating trend where one partner purposefully misleads another by stringing them along as a backup option for intimacy or validation, with no intention for emotional investment or sincerity. This terminology emerged in the last decade on popular forums and discussion boards among Gen Z and millennials, as many began recognizing they had fallen victim to such manipulation, kept around only as convenient emotional placeholders. The name cookie jarring arose as an analogy to keeping someone around like an extra cookie in a jar for a later hungry moment. The behavior itself ties closely to avoidant attachment patterns and a narcissistic desire to shore up self esteem through others' affection without reciprocating effort. Studies from 2022 found that 72% of online daters felt they had been cookie jarred at some point, while over 50% admitted to engaging in the practice themselves at least once, highlighting the normalization of such deceptive relational habits. The detrimental impacts of cookie jarring span from eroded self confidence in the party being deceived to patterns of mistrust that handicap the ability to find intimacy in the future. All outcomes that closely parallel observed impacts of the weltering dating trend central to the current paper's focus as well. Relatedly, the separate notion of ground hogging emerged around 2018, defined as repeatedly returning and breaking up with the same person in a cyclical nature without progress or commitment towards growth. Pop culture analogies arose, likening individuals stuck in this hot or cold relationship cycle to Bill Murray's character in Groundhog Day. The repetitive makeups and breakups characteristic of ground hugging signal poor relational health and revolve around issues like unaddressed conflict avoidance, general ambivalence, and a level of codependence that prohibits parties from moving on to healthier dynamic opportunities elsewhere long term. Ground hanging ties closely to the avoidant attachment concept of deactivation, distancing oneself when intimacy and vulnerability begin to make the individual uncomfortable, and then cycling back when the loss of that connection itself starts to trigger anxieties as well. This tug of war emotional conflict manifests in the cyclical return to that one familiar, if flawed, romantic option without resolution or self awareness. Sometimes in 2020, found over 20% or 80% of those actively dating online had fallen into a ground hanging experience, with nearly 60% admitting they struggle to recognize if and when their own behaviors slip into ground hugging tendencies. As prevalent normalization again emerges as a backdrop for these problematic dating trends, dangerous ripple effects result for emotional health and intimacy maturity across widening demographics. When poor relationship skills remain unaddressed due to social acceptance rather than motivation for self improvement, a slippery slope prognosis results for the dating landscape at large. The current research suggests that this exact environment has cleared the runway for an even more sinisterly manipulative dating trend to emerge from the shadows. The wonders. Yes, hello, Tania Elizabeth Castro, and to Liz Paul Medina and Sean Christoph Mohar. Hello, good morning to all of you, beautiful souls. How are you? How are you doing so far? I hope that you are doing well and your day is fine. Where are you coming from as well? Let me know. How are you so far, everyone? I hope that you are safe as of the moment. So the question then is, how does Waltering emerge as the latest predatory dating behavior apart from cookie jarring and ground hogging? As the proliferation of digital dating introduces both opportunities and obfuscation around relationship formation, a market of manipulation has emerged in tandem. On the heels of problematic behaviors like cookie jarring and ground hogging gaining notoriety, 2022 ushered in revelation of an even more explicitly exploitative dating trend, the notion of waltering. Waltering, a term derived from scavenging, vulture analogies, describes when an individual swoops into the life of a vulnerable person fresh from a breakup or loss, posing as a caring confidant with the ultimate aim of emotional or sexual exploitation. Recently, or early recognition percolated among therapists and support forums, but broader awareness came only in the last year after several high profile allegations of celebrities, influencers, religious leaders, and executives waltering subordinates following bereavement or divorce. Public consciousness of emotionally predatory relationship maneuvers had been steadily amplifying already. The aptly dubbed phenomenon of love bombing went viral back in 2020 as recipients found themselves blindsided when an initial bombardment of flattery, gifts, and praise swiftly swung to controlling abuse or disappeared once dependency set in. Love bombing provided many a crash course in the stark asymmetry between genuine care and choreographed fantasy. In contrast, Waltering often files under the radar for months thanks to a slower erosion of boundaries through friendship guises before opportunistic ulterior motives surface. Both employ manipulation, but while love bombing utilizes unjustified idealization, Waltering first gains trust through sympathy. This key divergence, establishing emotional intimacy through support rather than adoration, gives Waltering damage potential that's much sharper teeth as it leaves victims not just emotionally bruised, but existentially disoriented from the betrayal of such grief, adjacent caretaking being revealed as a sham, gaslighting, false promises, unpredictable hot cold cycles, all standard abuse fare, but Waltering uniquely exploits. During periods of bereavement when psychic defenses lay lowest, the profound violations stemming from having one's trust turn against them at their most heartbroken and helpless compounds. Waltering's severe psychological blows, especially around issues of trust, self esteem, and post traumatic growth. While comprehensive data remains scarce in these early identification phases, small surveys of therapists suggest Waltering rising rapidly among clients, citing betrayal trauma and intimacy disorders following instances fitting Waltering patterns, up to 38% by late 2022 compared to just 6% in 2019. Parallel spikes appear across anonymous support groups as well, pointing to prevalence predominantly among younger demographics, but noting occurrences across ages and orientations. Reports from teen or college age samples point to social media enabling covert initial contact from far older adults only to lead to gaslit coercion later on. Further analysis ties altering behaviors to dark triad personally manifestations like narcissism, Machiavellism, or Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, in which empathy deficits meet manipulative drive towards self serving ends without conscience. These clinical perspectives lend credence to Waltering qualifying as a particularly sinister subset of relational exploitation. The advent of digital spaces and loosening social mores around emotional vulnerability likely cleared the runway for such cunning opportunism to take off, Waltering arguably representing the vanguard of predatory dating behavior as empathy continues getting outspaced by shrewd performance. In effect, Waltering appears less an isolated trend and more the front line for bringing recalibrated emotional intelligence into modern dating consciousness, following years observing cookie cutting, ground hugging, and love bombing insinuate manipulation into relationship norms. While deception in mating rituals is far from new, access to data, attention, and vulnerability at smartphone swipe speeds calls for updated cautions as the lure of exploitation gains space and tech outspaces in-person discernment skills. Waltering's arrival on the mainstream radar signifies the need for not just vigilant boundaries against such deception, but unpacking why such emotional asymmetries exist to begin with. Reactions divide between disgust at such blatant opportunism and numb acquiescence of that's just dating culture now. But more constructive paths lie in discussing systems, allowing for intimacy betrayed. If prime conditions exist for freeing those grieving, what does that reflect about support gaps? Why does ambiguity between genuine care and craving connection so often lapse into the latter? Does relying on external ties to self worth invite such risks? In summation, Waltering's emergence cautions against the mythic dichotomy of cartoon heroes and villains when predatory behaviors metastasize subtly through incremental value shifts and incentive structures. While individuals always retain agency around ethical choice, collective questions around how mainstream dating platforms and practices might enable the acceleration of cunning ploys warrants parallel scrutiny if protection and prevention hope to outspace manipulation's profitability. So that's it. Like how Waltering speaks of the way it becomes popular nowadays, specifically in online dating apps. So, the emergence of Waltering as the latest predatory dating behavior. I don't know if you're familiar with this term, but for further readings, you could just find or search this paper, The Rise of Emotional Vultures. What's the title again? Let me check first. That's The Rise of Emotional Vultures, Exploring Opportunistic Dating Trends in the Wake of Vulnerability by Dr. A. Shanji Jerds. So this is the portion of the paper, and I'm going to read to you a part of it in my next slide. But for now, yes, hello to Tanya Elizabeth Castro, to Liz Paul Medina, and to Sean Christoph Mohar. How are you, beautiful souls? I hope that you are doing well. Well, I think take care always, and God bless you, beautiful souls. I'll be back in a little while. Bye bye for now.